Hello everyone, welcome to today's stream. Today we're going to be taking a look at Substance Painter. This is the Spring 2018.1 release. Now, we actually released Substance Painter yesterday, so today we're just going to, just jump in and just take a relaxed look at Substance Painter, and we're just going to talk about, some of the new features and things like that. So here we go. Before we get started, though, I do want to make a quick just announcement. So here, we've got GDC right around the corner. So we are having a big Substance Days event. It's going to be this Tuesday, March 20th. And we're going to have a full day of talks and presentations from industry veterans on all things substance. So this is very exciting. This is something that we're doing new at GDC. And this is going to be open to all attendees with an Expo Plus pass and above. So you have no need to RSVP, but try to show up early because the seats are going to be limited there. And then also, you don't want to miss out. We're going to have a Substance Day after party, so we're going to have like food, drinks, and prizes. So more info and tickets will be available on site there at GDC. Also, we're going to have a booth on the GDC floor. So if you're going to be there at GDC, please come by, talk to us. I'd love to meet you in person. If you have any questions or anything like that, it'd be awesome to just chat and talk some substance. All right, so now we're going to take a look at some of the new stuff that we have here in Substance Painter 2018. So let me just get rid of the YouTube screen there. All right, so here we are, Substance Painter 2018. The first thing that you're going to notice that we have here is a brand new UI. And so this is going to be kind of the flashiest thing you see when you first open Painter. So the team has gone in and just completely reworked all of the UI. Plus, they've gone in and made some new changes to some of the workflow and how the UI works. And it really provides just a much more pleasant experience while working in Painter, and it's just a lot more fun to use, I would say. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about here is this new dock system that we have. So here I just have like Painter, and what you see right now is like the default UI. So here underneath window, you can see that you have your reset UI button. That's what I've done here. Now, before I jump in too much, I do want to say that we also released a new Substance Painter Getting Started course yesterday. And so today's stream, we're just going to take, like I said, just kind of a relax, just kind of look at a lot of these new features and stuff like that. I'm going to be monitoring the chat, so if you guys have questions, please be sure to just ask, and I'll do my best to answer. So with this course, though, it's start to finish, complete new course. It's about 3 hours. So tried to make it as short as possible, so you're going to have to hear me talk for like 3 hours, so hopefully that won't be too annoying. Yeah, so it's a whole entire brand new course. And here, let me just minimize my window there. So sorry about that, getting a few pop-ups. So like I said, yeah, the whole new course is out, and so if you're new to Substance Painter, it's something that we've needed to rework our course, and so we're really glad to have a whole new thing that's going to be using the new UI, new workflow, new tools, layer instancing, anchoring, and all that kind of stuff as well. All right, so let's just get right into it. So one of the first things that we're going to have, or when I talk about, I would say this is probably one of the areas of the UI that I'm most excited about, is this new dock system. So here, like I said, underneath my window, I'm just looking at the default UI. So what I'm going to do is come over here to, like, say, the shelf tab, and there's a little close button. I'm just going to close this guy, and I'll close my properties, my layers, my texture set settings. Notice that as I start to close these windows here, they're showing up as icons on this far right-hand side of the UI, and this is what we refer to as the new dock. And so what I like to do with Painter is just use it like this. So now we have this really nice, complete open UI. You've got plenty of room to paint. You can see your object, your asset and everything that you want to work with just right here. And then we have this new dock system that allows us just to, jump into the menus that we need when we need them. So for example, I need to look at my texture sets. I can just click the texture set button. Here it is. Let's say that I'm just going to be working with maybe some brush properties. I can just have the brush properties open as I work here and as I'm painting, and just have a real minimalistic UI like this. And it's really been a pleasure to work with as I went through and worked on all the tutorials. Also, with a lot of our windows, we started to, the team went in and started to look at better ways that that you could use, like if you're using like a tablet or something like that. So for example, we have these tab buttons here, and we still have the ability to kind of scroll through these. But again, if you're working on kind of limited monitor space and you don't want to do a lot of scrolling on these views, just hitting these little tab buttons here will quickly navigate to what you want to work with here. So here you can just start to, just pop out these different tabs. You can also undock these here so they can be floating point windows, or you can dock them anywhere in the UI. It's always just similar to where Painter used to work before, but you can really just kind of start to work with this UI the way that you would like it to work. And so it's been really nice. So one of the things that I like to do is probably just have my layers here. So I'm going to open up the layer tab. You can also, you'll notice that, let's see here. Let's get this guy like this. We'll dock it. We'll open up our layers. You can still start to expand the window and control, the size of it, depending, even though it's kind of still docked here to this dock window. So here I'll just click this undock button, which depending on where I kind of snapped the window before, it's going to just land wherever I need it to. So here, what I kind of like to do is have maybe my layers and my properties. Here, let's take the properties and just kind of just snap them here to this view. So here you can see that I like to have just my layers and my properties panel here. And then a lot of times what I do for my texture set settings, instead of having them open like this, what I've been doing is just using the keyboard shortcut. So Control Alt right click, and then you can quickly just navigate to whatever texture set you want to work on. So say we're here on the head. I might come over here to my color. Let's just set a color value here, and now I'm painting as I work here. And again, I have this kind of nice minimalistic UI like this. So if you want to get even more kind of screen real estate available, so this time let's get rid of our properties panel. And one of the other new things that we introduced here is this new context toolbar here at the top of the viewport. So like I said, now I just have my layers selected here, but now I have this this context toolbar that allows me to do things like change my brush size, flow, pen pressure. Here I can activate my lazy mouse, symmetry, and things like that here. And so this is this little top menu bar, and it is context sensitive. So for example, right now you'll see here on the left toolbar, I'm using my paintbrush, but if I come in and say use the polygon fill tool, you can see now it, it's contextual aware. So now I'm back into like, the polygon fill modes. Like here we have like the polygon or the mesh fill and the UV chunk fill mode and so on. Again, this kind of, nixes the need for me to have this properties panel open all the time. So here again, I can have the UI the way I want it to, which is, I'll tell you, after using it the last, several days, it's just been a real joy to work like this. Now, we have this context bar, and that's pretty cool, but, you still, I'm mousing all over the UI and coming up here towards the top and things like that, and of course that isn't great. So what the team did was they created a new quick menu. Now this is really great. So like I said, here we have our layer stack, and I want to get to my brush properties. Now I can just simply right click, and I have this new context menu. So here I can come into, let's say, my brush settings here. Let's go to my alpha. I'm going to choose an alpha. I'm going to go back to my brush settings. I'm going to enable follow path, adjust my setting here, maybe go over to my material. See, I can get to everything I need right here within this little context box. Let's set a new color. You'll also notice that we have kind of a reworked color editor here, which is cool. And so now we'll come back here without even having to go to my texture sets. I'm going to use Control Alt right mouse button to select the body texture set, adjust my brush size using my keyboard shortcuts, and now I'm just kind of painting here as I go. Right click again, let's go back, maybe change our color to this red and start to paint again. Oh, you know what, I don't like that alpha. Let's come over here to our alpha, and let's try this one here. Now you'll notice to get rid of the context menu here, I just have to simply just left click when I come off. And when you do that, we're not actually going to activate a stroke. So here I've right clicked right on the right over top my mesh, so you don't have to worry about making a mistake and doing a stroke. I have to, it's funny because see what happens to you guys. But for me, I'm used to other software. Like you have something like this and then you click and it's going to do a stroke or an operation or something. So you'll notice in the tutorial I kept coming out here to the viewport and then clicking and then coming back. But you don't have to do that. It's just, something that was just in my head. But, here I've got it set up, so I'll just come back, just click over into here, and now I can start to paint again like this. So this new quick menu, you can't resize or move this guy, but it's going to just, it's going to appear wherever your mouse is when you right click. And again, you can use these tabs to quickly navigate through the settings like this. So, yeah, it's a huge game changer in terms of just using Painter, and it just becomes so much faster. And like I said, you have this new nice UI that you can work with in a very kind of more minimalistic way like this. So speaking of just looking, more at the UI here, let's see. We also have, we have our shelf, and again, like I said, the window can be pulled out like this. So another way I kind of like to use this is maybe put my shelf over on this side. So I'll dock it right over here. Let's see. Whoops. Let me get that guy in here. And then I'll typically use something like, maybe I'll use my brushes. And then here for the categories, I just turn those off. So now I have just my brushes here. And again, I can go back to my brushes, paint, right click, use the menu again. If I need to switch up any alphas or anything like that, paint again, so on. So again, it's just another way to kind of set up the UI so it works like you want it to. Okay, so some of the other things we've done is just try to just in a more intelligent way compartmentalize some of these menu options. Again, it's trying to minimize how many of these menus you're having to go into. So for example, we now have a new display settings tab, and you'll notice that we have environment settings, camera settings, and viewport settings here. Again, using the same kind of button click zoom menu. Again, we've had this in previous versions of Painter, but we really stuck to this design because it helps for those who are just working on tablets and things like that. So here you can see that like I said, environment, camera, and viewport are all within the same display settings tab now. So it's just one window to get to all of these different options here. And again, you have all the same options, so it's not like, yeah, the UI looks different. Just we changed the grouping of a very small amount of things. I would say probably the biggest thing here is this display setting, so you don't have to worry about, oh man, new Painter, I'm gonna have to relearn all this stuff. No, you're gonna jump right in and feel right at home. So anyways, like here, we have our environment settings. And as I start to scroll here, so for example, here I'm on environment settings, and you'll see we have these tabs, environment, camera, which again, navigatable by these buttons. But as I start to scroll, you'll notice that the button then will kind of automatically switch to the section of the scroll UI where I am here. So one question that came in, is this new UI compatible with previous Substance Painter tutorials? I don't know. It's hard to say. I would say no, because if you're a brand new user and you're getting into the software, if anything looks at all different, I think that becomes a challenge, and I think that it puts a barrier in the way for new users to learn. So that's why we really took the time to focus down and create a whole brand new 2018 Substance Painter course, start to finish, texturing this old lantern asset. Another thing that's cool about the course is it's all focused on using like a high poly asset from start to finish. It's 12 videos, about 3 hours, so it goes through the whole thing. So I would say if you're new, you're wanting to get into Substance Painter, just go straight to the new course and don't really worry about the old tutorials. Now, if you're familiar with Painter, and like I was just getting ready to say, if you're new to these streams, you'll notice I typically kind of go off on some of these tangents like this. What I was kind of getting to was, before, yeah, we did make a few changes here. Whoops, let me set that back. We did make a few changes, grouping things, but nothing is so dramatically changed that you're going to be like, wait a minute, where's this? Where's that? And you're going to be hunting around. So with that said, if you're kind of following some of the older tutorials, you can get your way around it as well. So yeah, coming in here and just kind of doing a revamp here of the viewer and display settings. Now, with that said, we have another tab here, which is this shader tab. So if I come in, you can see that we have shader settings. And so now the shader settings has its own tab here, which is great. So we have shader tab, which is going to be separated here from the display tab. Again, just to reiterate, we now group environment, camera, and viewport all under the display settings now. Okay, so we still have other things like your history. So the history's here. If I want to go back through my history, I can do that. We also have the log, which the log is still here as well. And here is our texture set settings. Looks like this icon. And then finally, you have your texture sets here. And you'll notice that everything within these menus still all work the exact same. Nothing's changed here. Just, kind of a new visual paint's been applied to it, so to speak. So really, that's kind of what we're looking at there. Okay, so what else can I say here about this? Let's see. I think that pretty much covers the new UI. Oh, yeah, one other thing here. Like I said, just kind of putting a kind of a new, fresh look on everything. We tried to make it to where, you know, the UI and things like that are just a little bit more visually easier to see. You can see that we have these new slider bars now. So you have this little dot circle here. The hit area for this bar is actually pretty large. So you'll notice that, you know, I can get in here and my mouse isn't even touching that bar yet I can still slide. So you don't have to look at this and think, oh, wait a minute, is this tiny little thing? No, you can come in and just grab like right into the bar and just work with it. So, you know, your mouse gets close enough like this, and then you can start to work with it. So they're real easy to grab onto, so you don't have to worry about that. Also, if you just come over here to the numeric entry, you've got a numeric input. So now you can just click on the numeric value to enter in like an actual value for that. Okay, so that really kind of takes care of the UI. Like I said, you'll see this kind of all over. You know what? I say that, and I've got a couple more things. Here you'll notice some of the more grouping. Here in the viewport, we've added this new menu here where it's allows you to switch your different views. So like here, we have material mode. So if you hit M on the keyboard, it takes you to the material. We're now grouping that under what we call the lighting mode. And then we have the single channel modes. So for example, here, let me undo this. Let's see, let's go back to M. Here, I'm going to add a material to this. So before I do that though, let me grab something from my shelf. So let me come over here to my shelf, which is docked over here. So what I'm going to do is just open up my categories. Let me grab a material. Here, let's do a smart material. Expand this guy out like this. And I don't know. Let's maybe grab this old bronze here. So I'm just going to left click. Now, something else that's new about 2018.1 is we now have the ability to just simply take a material, whatever, you know, a smart material or material, and drag and drop it right here onto the 3D view. And when we do this, you can see that it highlights what the texture set's going to be. Again, I don't have to have my texture set window open up over here, select the texture set first. I can just drag right onto whatever texture set I want. So here I'll place this on the body. And now we have this this old bronze material here. Again, I want to texture it on the head. Take my material, drag and drop it on the head like this. And then here, same thing for the base. We'll do this. All right, so now I have this material set. Now, what I was getting ready to explain here with this drop-down menu is we have just kind of recategorized this a little bit. So the material is just grouped under lighting, which I think makes a lot more sense. Then here you have a single channel, which is our channels. So if I wanted to look at base color, I could just choose base color. You can still cycle these by hitting C on the keyboard to cycle through your channels, like this. And then here we also have our mesh maps. So to get to your mesh maps, you can just hit Shift B here, and you can see that just hitting Shift B will let me target through any mesh maps that I have. So for example, if I come over here to my texture set settings, I'm talking about these mesh maps that were baked here using the integrated baker like this here. So again, what I like about this, I could, if I needed to use this menu, see, maybe I only need it for 1 second. Like I just need to make a quick channel. Like I just need to drop in an ambient occlusion channel. I'm done with this menu. Why not close it? You know, save up the screen real estate like that. So again, I just love this docking system. So again, just hitting Shift B to kind of toggle through my different channels and so on. And then of course I can hit M on the keyboard just to get right back to my material mode. So that's what this drop down here is referencing. We also just kind of grouped some of the viewport stuff. Like for instance, are you going to be in perspective or orthographic? Do you want to go into your, you know, split views and all that kind of stuff? It's all just placed here on this top right-hand corner. And then here we have our button here for going into iRay rendering mode like this. Okay, so here you can see as far as menu system go, we've also added this viewport tab here. So those keyboard shortcuts I was just talking about, you know, hitting C, Shift C, B, Shift B, just to kind of go back and forth through these guys. So these are the keyboard shortcuts of what I was just talking about here with this new viewport menu. Okay, so Let's see, we talked about this menu here, and we talked about some little changes there. Okay, so now I think that I am actually finished with the UI part here. Oh, and we also talked about the drag and drop here, which was, again, another really handy feature for that. So, yeah, like I said, the team put a lot of work into the new UI and things like that. But another area that the team put a lot of work into, and one of the things that's really important about this is always the area of improvement, fixing bugs, stability, as well as speed improvements. A lot of things are happening under the hood of Substance Painter with each of these updates. A lot of times I check the YouTube comments and I see a lot of people asking for, specific features and things like that. And please, just, if you don't see your feature here yet, just know we're listening. The team is always looking at everybody's feedback, and we're not forgetting things. So just, again, have patience with us. There's a lot of really exciting changes that are happening under the hood, and we're starting to see some of these changes here in 2018.1, which are really, foundational building blocks for some really exciting stuff that's coming down the road. So I'm going to stop talking right there, because if any of the devs are listening to me right now, they might end up wringing my neck next week at GDC. So I'm going to stop myself there. But in terms of talking about improvements, one of the things that's been really exciting is the improvements in the handling of, if you're using like a Wacom pen or a tablet or something like that, new performance optimizations, which means that you should experience much smoother painting, especially in 4K. And you should also see improvements even when working on lower end laptops as well. So you'll notice a lot of that, it comes into play when you're using, let's say, a Wacom pen. So one of the things, and if I can explain this correctly, sometimes when you were painting in Painter, of course I don't actually have my Wacom pen set up right now, but we were painting here in Painter. Let me just quickly grab myself a layer. And, there could be some type of disruption in what the stroke was coming in. So as I started to paint a stroke, maybe some of the data would miss and you wouldn't get like a really smooth result. But now we're no longer syncing the viewport to the hardware, so to speak. And so what you're going to end up seeing is a much smoother painting process. And like I said, especially when you're using a Wacom pen, where we're still retaining all the data that's coming in from the pen. So even if there is a slight hiccup or something like that inside of Painter, you're not losing any of that stroke data anymore. So you'll notice right off the bat that using your pen is going to be so much faster. You're going to get a much smoother experience. And like I said, especially, when you're looking at painting in 4K and so on. And so those were some really big improvement stuff that the team had worked on with that. Another thing that the team worked on is an improved padding, improvement on working with seam padding. So here, one of the things I'm going to do with this, let me just switch my view here. Now, this is an image that you can see. We talked about this kind of on our blog post. But seams are now pretty much almost invisible, even when painting across badly distorted UVs or even at different texel ratios. So this image just kind of helps illustrate this. I don't actually have a 2017 to kind of load up at the same time to demonstrate it, but here you can see in like 2017 I'll say 2017.x. You can see that in this logo here, we're starting, you can really see some of these seams that are showing up. And then if you look at the new padding version, what the team has done behind the scenes, it just really helps to even further minimize any of those seam issues that you were getting. Here again, you can see something with these bars, these vertical bars like this, between the difference between 2017 and then the new padding version. So what this one is showing is actually painting across UV shells that have different texel density. So no matter what you're going to do there, you're going to get a resolution looking difference. But you can see that with 2017, you get really sharp kind of seam lines. But in the new padding, things are interpolated and blurred a little bit more. So it's not as apparent as it was in 2017. So this new padding system, again, is going to help a great deal with the level of quality that you're getting with that. And so again, the question, is there any ETA on seamlessly painting across texture sets? I don't have anything I can announce right now, but I can tell you, the team is working on that, but I'm not allowed to say anything just yet. So the next thing that we want to talk about here is, again, talking about performance. Several areas went through a much needed cleanup. Here, let me switch my screen back to Substance Painter here. So yeah, like I was saying, several areas went through a much needed cleanup, and performance has been improved across the board. So some of the areas that you're going to notice this is in project loading. So your project should load faster, saving should be faster, viewport performance overall. We talked a little bit about that just a little bit ago with our brushstroke. All that should be better. Shelf loading and thumbnail generation should all benefit from this. So we've taken a lot of feedback from studios who have a lot of really dense shelves with a lot of content. The shelf may be taking too long to load and generating thumbnails. So we've done a lot of work under the hood to really improve that, so that again, it's just the entire software, the entire workflow, viewport, everything should be snappier and just better to work with. So that's kind of where we are in improvements, and like I said, it's really the work that's been done here in 2018 is a very solid foundation for a lot of exciting things to come in the future. So yeah, I'm just kind of checking it to see a few of these if we have anything here. Again, some things coming in about painting across UDIMs. I can't say anything about that just yet, but the team is still working on that there. Okay, so some of the other things I want to discuss here is some of the new content that ships with Substance Painter. And so we're going to have some new things like some 3D noises. So let's take a look at that. So here, let me just... Again, I'm using my keyboard shortcut, Control-Alt-Right mouse click just over an area of the mesh to quickly select the texture set. And I'm going to come in here and create like a fill layer here. Now, I've got my fill. Here I don't have my properties up, so I'm just going to right-click and use my quick view menu, and I'll navigate here over to the material. Let's just turn off all these channels here like this. And here, for the base color, let me come into here, and I'm already just doing a filter here for 3D underneath the resources. And here you'll see that we have a lot of there's a new 3D distance generator, a 3D linear gradient, and now we have these 3D noises here. So we have Perlin noise fractal, a simplex noise, and then also a whirly noise here. So here, let's look at the whirly noise. So I'm going to load this in. And so now you can see we have this whirly noise. And here, just so we can see the settings as I'm talking about them, let's come over here to our UI and let's grab our properties here. I'm just going to leave this kind of view up like this while I'm talking about it. So here, if we look at this guy, this is our noise here. You can see that I'm going to have a balance setting like this here. I have noise parameters. I have different modes, so I can go through here and change different modes for this particular set. And then here I have the different style options. So these 3D noises were added in Substance Designer 2018.1. So if you happen to catch the live stream I did, I think it was last week, then these 3D noises are coming from Designer. They're now in Painter as well. So we're also kind of syncing up the feature set between the applications in terms of content and things like that. So that's where we're kind of getting these 3D noises. What's awesome about these 3D noises as well, they're noises in actual 3D space, so we're not going to get any seams when we use these noises. Now with that, you're going to want to not use planar projection. So notice here that the projection's in UV, but I'm not getting any seams here on the mesh. Here, let me do this. Let me drop into my 3D view. I'm sorry, my 2D 3D split. And we are just looking at the body here. Let's do this. Let's come over here to my texture set list. Let's just solo this, and we'll have our properties up. So we're just looking at this body. Here you can see where I would be getting all these seams and so on. And of course, as I move across the mesh like this, we don't see the seams here with a really complex noise like this. Which is awesome. But I'm doing this in UV projection mode. So if I set this to triplanar, bam, it just breaks everything. So with 3D noises, you're not going to use triplanar projection because they're actual 3D noises. Now, if you need to scale, again, here underneath the fill, you're not going to want to change the UV scale to do that because the scale parameters are going to be controlled here by or underneath these 3D noises like this. So here you have like a scale setting. So this is where I can adjust the overall scale, but I can also choose to adjust scale on each axis here. So for example, we can change just on the X-axis if we want, or on the Y like this, or on the Z. So we can break this off. And like I said, each one of these noises here, let's see, let's go and let's just get rid of this material mode. I just want to make sure I have this. And this time we'll try something like, I don't know, let's do this Perlin noise fractal here. Okay, this one's here. Let's do this. We'll increase the contrast so we can see it. And again, underneath noise parameters, you're going to have like your scale setting here, and then you will be able to scale on each individual axis like this. So that is how we can use some of these 3D noises here. Like I said, just be aware that you want to just keep it on UV projection and don't use the UV scale option for tiling. You want to work with the noise parameters for these guys. Okay, so a couple of these other guys. In this case, let me just tear off my properties, and I'm just going to dock it here in the UI like this. And then I'm going to come back here just to my full 3D view. Okay. So let's look at another one of these guys. So here, let me just do a search for, it's going into material mode. Let me do this. And this time here, I'm going to take a look at a 3D gradient that we have. So just to demonstrate it, I'm just going to use this here in the color channel so you can see what it's doing. So let's just use this 3D noise. And here you can see my balance. Basically what we're getting is like a gradient here that we can use. So here you can see we have like this gradient. But this is, like I said, this is a 3D gradient. And so here we're going to have these position fields. So we have the position start and end. And you can see that for the image input, it's actually using the position map that we baked. So what I can do here is I'm just going to pop into my viewport. Well, here, let's do it from this drop-down menu. I'm going to come to my mesh maps and just look at the position view. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my 3D start position. So I'm going to click the color picker. I'm going to use here my eyedropper, and I'm just going to sample my start position here. And then I'm going to come over to my end position, use my eyedropper, and then set the position here. So now that I have that set up, I'm just going to hit M on the keyboard to go back to my material. And now you can see that because I set the start position here, this is where we're getting our black for our gradient, and the end position's over here. And now I have my balance control. So we can just use those start and end positions to position this gradient exactly where we want it to be. And so here, a kind of a good spot to use this. So we have this old bronze. Let's grab a material like, I don't know, why not use camouflage? Wouldn't you have camouflage on top of old bronze? Okay, so we have something like this. Let's do a black mask. Let's come into here and do a fill. And then I'm going to use my linear gradient like this. And we can increase our contrast and do something like this. Here, let's invert it. So we've got meat matte with maybe some camo pants covering his bronze underlying material. I don't know why we would do this, but anyways, you can see that here's a case where I'm just using this 3D linear gradient to kind of create like a 3D mask, just using this gradient. And again, we have these start, position, and end points that we can set based on the position map that we have there. Okay, so another thing, speaking of position map that's actually really cool, is we have a new baking option for our position. So let's come over here to our texture sets and unsolo everybody here. And let's see, what can I do? Okay, let's do this. I'm going to come into here. Again, I'm still on the body part, which is what I'm working on, the body material part. And if I look at my texture set settings, we do have this position here. So I'm going to show you, let's add a gradient to this. Let's add our 3D gradient here. So we're going to come up here to the fill like we have here. And let's get rid of his camo pants, and let's just come into here, and again, let's just select our color channel. So we're gonna just put this gradient back on the color so I can illustrate a point here. So we're gonna come into here, I'm gonna use our 3D gradient, okay? And let's increase our contrast a little bit. All right, so now I have this kind of balance control, and you can see starting the position basically here at the bottom where his feet are, and then we can move this balance to go up here towards the top. So let's say that we have this gradient, and of course this guy's made up of these multiple texture sets. We have 3 texture sets. And let's say here, let's name this guy, this is our gradient. So let's say that we want to instance this gradient to the other texture sets. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to instantiate this across the texture sets, and we want this to be on the base and the head, and I'll click OK. And so here we have this gradient. Now this is behaving, kind of like what you would expect. So it's basically the gradient and its instance, so it'll work, the control, everything's updating across the texture sets. But what we have here is this gradient has a start and end for the body. It has a start and end for the head. Excuse me, a start and end for the head, and then it has one for the base. And this is really just, we would like this gradient just to be the entire mesh. Like, wouldn't it be cool if it took the whole mesh into play there? And well, the answer to that is it does in 2018.1. So let's do this. Let's come over here to our texture set settings, and we're going to bake our mesh maps. Now, let me come back here to my position baker. So I'm going to enable this guy, and we have a new mode here for normalization scale, and we have per material, which is the default setting, and that's the mode that was in previous versions of Painter. But we have this new mode called full scene, and this is going to be awesome. So we're going to use normalization scale set to full scene. I'm going to apply this to all, meaning that even though I opened my bake mesh maps here for this single texture set, we've now set a normalization scale to be the full scene, and I want to bake this setting for all my texture sets. And then here I'm going to batch process that by just hitting bake all texture sets. And so now when I do that, you can see that my gradient that's been instanced, so we're on the body here. This is where we have the gradient. On the head, if we come over here to the head, you can see it's just instanced. All right, so let's go back here to the body, and here we have our gradient. Now if I go to my balance, we now have the gradient, which is now taking into consideration the full scene scale. So now I have this really awesome gradient here that's working across all my texture sets as kind of one unified value. And this is fantastic. I mean, this is really cool. You can imagine, like, if you're doing something like ground dirt, this would be perfect for something like this. Or there's all kinds of usages for this here. But this is just a way to showcase what this new position mode is going to do. So a question that came in, how do you dock properties to the far right? It's really simple. So like, say I have properties here. All I have to do is I can just hit the close button. So as soon as I hit the close button, it's just going to snap back here to this dock window. So this little dock window, you can tear it off. Cool, I didn't know that. So if I wanted to put my dock over here, I could. Let's put it back. So this little dock window here, whenever you close a panel, it's just going to take the panel and just send it right back here. So again, if I want to close everything out, I can do just this here. So that is going to cover what we had here. Let's just put our layers back and our properties. Dock this guy like this here. And so that is going to take care of what we were doing here with baking of this full scene like this. And I got to say that's awesome. That's one of my favorite features. So it's really good here. So this setting here, I think one person, let's see, just asking a few questions here. With this too, this position gradient here can also work when, here I showed it just using this as a fill layer, but this also works if you're using this within generators and so on. So again, being able to set that texture set, let's see, going back to the bake mesh map setting, your position, just know that you just need to set your normalization scale to full scene so that, it will take into consideration the full scene there. Okay, so another feature, this is going to be the last one that we talk about here, is we've added a new sample scene, which allows you to work with tiling textures here in Painter. So if we come over here to File, and you can always go to Open Sample Scene, and we have Meat Mat, the Preview Sphere, and we have this new tiling material. So I'm going to open this guy here, and now you'll see that you have this plane. It's a single texture set, as you can see here, and as I start to paint here, you can see that it's just focusing on tiling here as I work. So what we can do with this is use this to help us create just tileable textures. So to kind of demonstrate this, let's just paint some height information here. So I'm going to come over, and I have just a standard layer set to height. Let me set my height value all the way to 1. And then here, let's see, I can still use my quick guide menu here. So I've got my alpha selected. Let's come over here to the alpha, and I'm going to grab this shape here. And then we'll come back here into our view. Let me scale this guy up, rotate my brush. So get something like this, and I'm just going to stamp this down. Move my light here just a little bit. So I'm starting to add this piece of detail like this. Now I'm just going to rotate my alpha the other way. And again, here I'm not being like really accurate, precise with this, but here, let me do this. Put this guy here. And let's see here. Let's go in and start to let's add another alpha. So this time I'll come in. Let me do a search here for shape. Yeah, I'm going to use this guy here. So again, I'm just kind of adjusting my settings here on my brush. So now I'm going to stamp this data down like this. Let's rotate my brush around. Whoops. Just decrease the size here. Do a stamp here. Okay, so now you can see kind of like this tiling texture I'm trying to kind of work up here. Let's do one more shape. Let's come in. Let's go back to our alphas. Let's grab this little bracket shape here. I'll scale this guy up. Let's just kind of fit it right into this section like this. Okay. So now, you know, I'm trying to build up maybe this little kind of sci-fi panel here like this. And here, let's do another one. Is there anything cool? I don't know. Why not this little guy? All right. So, and then maybe we'll come in and kind of put this here in the corners. So we'll do something like this. All right. So yeah, let's just say that we had, you know, a shape like this going. And so you can see I'm starting to, as I start to paint, I'm just working on kind of tiling this across each one of these kind of quadrants here. Since I did some painting on here, what I'm going to do here, let's come over to our texture set settings. Again, I just love these panels because, you know, I don't need to have this texture set open all the time because I'm just using it right now just to add ambient occlusion. That's all I wanted. So now I can close it. And here I've painted some detail here. So this is like a detail layer. And so now I have my height, but I also need some ambient occlusion in that. So now I'm just going to add a new effect here. Again, I should have mentioned this earlier, but we also, you'll notice that some of the icons have changed. They didn't change like really dramatically, so it's like not one of those things where you're not going to have any idea what stuff is. But they have changed a little bit, so just to kind of help things be a little bit more clear. We also did some grouping here within these menus. I'll talk about that in a second. But for right now, let's add a filter here. And for the filter, I'm going to scroll down and just add the HBAO filter. And let's adjust our radius like this. So now I'm using some height in here to kind of generate this kind of sci-fi kind of paneling here. So yeah, with this template like this, it just allows you to come in and it's just something easy to kind of help you with making sci-fi floors, doors, you know, just whatever, ground planes, stuff like that. On our blog post, we showed an example of, you know, like a cobblestone texture, things like that. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Here you'll notice that this wireframe is just on by default. So if you're wondering where that is, we can just now come over here to the display tab under viewport settings and show mesh wireframe. So if I turn that off, I can turn it on. I can adjust the opacity. I can even change the color. So maybe we need like a, you know, like a green color or something like that. Maybe something like yellow. This is a little bit more visible. But here I'm just going to turn that off. Don't need the display settings, so I'll get rid of it. And then here you'll notice that now we have this really nice tiling texture here as we work. Now, one of the things I was kind of getting ready to talk about a moment ago is just, you know, menu organization. So if I right-click here on this layer stack, this right-click menu, it's context sensitive as well, but we've started to just kind of group things. So you'll notice here we have our masking operations here at the top. Here's, you know, all of our mask stuff here going. We have the creation of masks, toggling and inverting, mask background, invert, clear, remove, export to file, export to clipboard, things like that. Then you have your kind of edit operations like cut, copy, duplicate, instantiate, that kind of stuff. And then here you also have your effect operations like add, generators, paint effects, all that kind of stuff. And then finally anchor point here. And so this menu is context sensitive as well. So let's see. Okay, trying to think. Yeah, so you'll notice here, like, I'm right-clicking on here. Some things are not showing up. Like, I can't create a smart material, but if I click here, now I can create a smart material. These things are now disabled because I can't work with these based on this being a layer group and so on. So only the operations that are that are available are going to be visible depending on what you click on. So for example, I click on a standard layer. At this point in time, you can't instantiate a painted layer across texture sets. So that operation is kind of grayed out for me. Another thing here, if I have basically my fill layer and let's say I have a paintbrush is enabled, I'm on a fill layer and I try to paint, we have a new option here, and this is for new users because we found this was kind of, it was kind of confusing. You're like, well, I create a layer, why can't I do anything on it? So now you have a fill layer, you click on it, you have this little option that says, hey, fill layers are not paintable. Do you want to create a paint layer? Yes. And so it'll quickly create a paint layer for you. I don't know if you're in the same boat I am, but even as much as I've used Painter, I still keep doing that. So I've used that quite a few times. So it's actually kind of helpful. Okay, so that is really going to cover the last thing that I wanted to showcase here. So you'll see this is 2018.1. Like I said, it released yesterday, so it's available in your account to download for those on Substance subscription. And the big takeaway here from 2018.1 has been a complete rework of the UI, a reorganization of the UI, new icons, new kind of emphasis on workflow and productivity. Just, as we start to grow, Painter's still a pretty young application. So as we start to grow Painter, there's a lot of really cool things that, we envision Painter growing into. And so we want to make sure we have a UI that's in place that can, grow with that. You don't want to have like some cluttered mess, 2 or 3 years down the road and be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible to navigate. So the team is also thinking about those kind of things in their mind as they work too. So they're always thinking about features, but they're also thinking about usability. And of course, the entire team is always thinking about and listening to feedback from you guys. So, contacting us, on our forums, tweeting at us, things like that. We always love to hear that feedback from you. Here, let me just close out that. Okay, so we also, like I said, worked a lot on the improvements. So just to kind of recap, we had, improvement across the board. You should see projects loading faster, the material library working faster, and I'm sorry, the material library loading faster with thumbnails, things like that. Your projects loading faster, painting in the viewport, you'll see smoother, things like that. And so then we also added some new content. We have the 3D noises, the 3D gradient, the new tiling sample project. And then, of course, don't forget you have here under your baked mesh maps where you're going to work with your position here, your normalization scale set to full scene. So that's a new mode there. All right, so that's going to kind of close out everything. I just want to thank everybody for joining me on today's live stream. So again, we are going to be out there in GDC. If you're going to be there, please come by. I'd love to meet you face to face. The team, we're going to have a lot of the dev team from France is going to be there, and they'd be excited to talk with you as well. And if you're going to be at Substance Days, like I said, we've got a lot of really great artist presentations. I'm really excited to get to sit and watch those myself, so I can't wait to see that content. I do believe that we are going to be allowed to not live stream those, but I do believe we did get permission from GDC to be able to show those videos at a later date. So if you can't make it, I do think we will have those. And everybody, hope you enjoyed the new 2018 build. Again, I always like to give a special shout out to the algorithmic team, the Substance Painter team. You guys are amazing. You're wizards. I am always my mind's always blown at what you guys are doing. And so, awesome release. It's been fun just from an artist standpoint myself, being able to play with it. And lastly, we have the new Painter course. So if you're new to Painter, jump over to Substance Academy and check that out. So thanks a lot, everybody, and I will see you on the next stream. Take care and have a good weekend.